Despite technology rapidly advancing every year, the gaming industry has been leaning more and more into bringing old games into new hardware, be it with remakes, ports, remasters, emulation, collections, or any other way. Companies love re-releasing their classic games and giving them a new light. But then there's Kirby. How rarely brings their old games back? But they don't really need to. Be it with Virtual Console or Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo has been the one responsible to make these classic games more accessible to newer consoles. So with the big end handling the more basic ways of re-releases, HAL has taken the more interesting approach: remakes. So far, HAL has only done a few remakes. There's a Japanese-only Super Star Stalker, even though that just seemed like a sequel to Star Stalker, but everywhere I look they call it a remake, so there's that. There's the controversial Nightmare in Dreamland, being a remake of Kirby's Adventure. Honestly, that game can be a whole video on its own. And then there's the incredible Superstar Ultra, greatly improving graphics and controls, adding a whole lot of new content, expanding the universe and lore, giving more character and personality to Dedede and Meta Knight that they ever had before, and overall improving an already great game into an amazing one. And that's all the Kirby remakes. We don't talk about him. So it took everyone by surprise to see developer Kirby's Return to Dreamland be remade for the Switch with Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Personally speaking, the original game is not only my favorite Kirby game, but also my top 5 favorite games of all time. So to say I was excited was an understatement. But with love also comes hate. Deluxe has to stand up to one of the best entries in the series. Any small problem will be nothing special to most. But to me, oh boy, this game has a long road ahead. Welcome to Kirby Month. Every week I will release a new video celebrating the long history of Kirby as a tribute to this pink puffle that changed my and so many people's lives. And today we are talking about Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Does the original game hold up? What does Deluxe do to improve on this adventure? Is the new content any good? And does this game deserve the full $60 price tag? We will see all that and more. So get your friends together, shake that controller, and let's once again return to Dreamland. Before we can talk about that sweet deluxe content, let's quickly look at what the original game was all about. On a sunny and friendly day, Kirby and his friends were playing around chasing cake and stuff, until a mysterious traveler known as Magolor crash lands on planet Popstar. Losing most of his ship parts and energy spheres, Kirby being Kirby decides to help the stranger and joined together by Bandana 1D, King Dedede, and Meta Knight sets off in an adventure to gather the missing pieces and help Magolor. I already said it in the past how much I love this story. It's so simple yet perfectly executed. It showcases one of the best characters of Kirby and introduces the beloved Magolor in a great way. Over the course of the game, you grow attached to this little cat egg. You can talk to him whenever you want, he congratulates you every time you get another ship part, he lets you access to fun bonuses like ability and challenge rooms, which all together makes that grand reveal at the end all more painful. But let's not go too far, we really need to talk about the main reason this game clicked so much with so many people back in the day: the gameplay. It's hard to believe since this same formula has been used for more than a decade now, but Return to Dreamland feels so refreshing to play. We still have all the old Kirby goodness but on an elevated level, being the biggest upgrade the copy abilities. Even to this day, Return to Dreamland gives us the biggest movesets in the series, making every copy ability a pleasure to control, allowing them to all feel useful and responsive while still giving what makes each ability unique. Take high jump for example. In the classic games it did just what the name says, do a high jump. In Return to Dreamland, you can now charge the jump and also do a downward boost. These are all small additions that go a long way of making high jump more enjoyable while still keeping what makes that ability. And this can be extended to the level design itself. Everything feels so tightly paced. A perfect amount of enemies, abilities and puzzles that will never bore you, but it still gives that good old Kirby charm. And speaking of that, while Return to Dreamland does have a gimmick in the form of super abilities which are stronger and flashier abilities available for a limited time, for better or worse, this is the peak of basic Kirby. The level themes are not unique, said super abilities don't take away too much from the focus, and overall this game won't really shock you, just like Planet Robot or Forgotten Land would. But the trade-off is that previously mentioned tight level design and that Kirby factor. This game has such an inviting energy, the soundtrack is sublime, the abilities are incredibly fun to use, and that level design pushes every great aspect to the front. It's a perfect blend between classic and exciting. Listen, Return to Dreamland is my favorite Kirby game, but even for me, it's a very complex process trying to explain why so many people, including myself, find such an appreciation for such a basic kids game. But wasn't that always the appeal of Kirby? A simple game for newcomers and experienced gamers to just enjoy and feel the colorful energy of the franchise? A game easy enough for everyone to pick up, but one that won't hold your hand all the time? You are free to experiment, to travel the levels at your own pace, to use the different properties of the copy ability to complete puzzles, and in that front, Return to Dreamland clears every other Kirby game. At least in my opinion. Again, you can't really talk about how good this game is without sounding insane. If you like Kirby, if you like its mentality, if you like to have a more relaxed yet interesting adventure in this colorful and welcoming world with its great characters, you will like this game. So does it hold up? Of course, it's been holding up for almost 12 years now. Saying Return to Dreamland is a good game is nothing new, and for the most part, Deluxe knows that. Before we can talk about any new modes, we need to know how this remake handles the original, and it does an interesting job. The biggest and most controversial part, aside from is indeed the main selling point of the game, the new and improved graphics. And personally, Jesus, this game is so beautiful. During my whole playthrough I said time and time again, wow, this looks so good. From the small things like the shadow look from wing to the biggest part like the gorgeous backgrounds. Some special shadows at all the dark areas, the caves of Onion Ocean, basically all of White Wafers, the Lord Starcutter, all of Dangerous Dinner, and the entrance to Ground Doomer might just be the single best looking Kirby thing ever. Even the CGI cutscene had a huge upgrade with more complex effects and smoother animation. Now the original cutscenes look like action figures with how stiff they move in comparison. But Return to Dreamland is not a perfect game, and one of the biggest problems with that original game is that it never had a personality on its own, and in my opinion, Deluxe fixes that. We still have all of the details and all of the scale of Return to Dreamland, but now we are spinning that into a pop-up book style. A particular style that resembles one of the cancelled Kirby GCM prototypes, also known as one of the prototypes for Return to Dreamland. That's a good detail. But what brings that style together is the outlines. Like them or not, the outlines make the style. There's a mod made by Toby B that completely removes the outlines, and while I go back and forth if it looks better or worse, I can't deny you lose that style that Remake is going for. My personal problem with the outlines is how pixelated the game makes the characters look, exposing how rough some things can look, things that normally would go unnoticed and are necessary to keep the game stable, but after a while they stop bothering me anymore. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say everything looks better. While I go back and forth with places like Racing Ruins, the sunset parts of Narinu look straight up worse. The textures of the ground and the background looks great, but the lighting is completely f***ed. The warm orange colors of the regional are now more yellowish, taking away from that sunset vibe, but that's my biggest complaint about the graphics, for now, because overall this game just looks and feels more snappy. A smooth 60 FPS and some upgraded controls go a long way in making this game feel even greater. The original wasn't bad per se, at the time it still was the best controlling Kirby game, but going back to it, yeah, Deluxe is better. Not to mention multiple abilities that lost some attacks in the future entries are now back at their full potential, and in the case abilities that gained move over the years, those are back too. And I'll complain about it again. Just like in Satellites, you can now charge Hammer Flip, which ruins the move by making it slow and dealing less damage than the original. Pain and suffering. Calming down. Strangely, as far as I know, Nero is the only ability that didn't get a move back. The Falling Spine from Triple Deluxe. Fuck Nero, I suppose. But aside from those two abilities, all the rest work like a dream. Stone has more transformations, abilities like Tornado and Wind have updated designs, Fire has Fire Spin, everything is right in the world. But Kirby isn't the only one with some upgrades. The Return to Dreamland trio, wait, my bad, Team Kirby as is now known. What a Sonic Heroes looking ass name. They too got their move from Stylize, along with the additions to other abilities like the Skyward Beam for Meta Knight or the Charge Hammer Flip for Dedede. But who cares about all abilities when we got the two new additions to the roster? Here we have Mecha and Sand. Mecha is a long-range projectile ability that's good for keeping a distance with fireballs and a chargeable Mega Laser that you can store for later use. But it's not afraid of getting up close with a fiery jab attack and a really cool combo move after the dash attack. A great ability that has a little bit for everyone. Sand on the other hand is a more close range ability with fast and creative moves, combining multiple aspects from other abilities like Stone, Water, Leaf, High Jump and others to create a diverse moveset great for both offense and defense. Personally my favorite of the two, but both are a great addition to the game, in concept. You remember how I talked about how good and tight the level design is, or something like that? Well, when you introduce two new abilities to a game that wasn't made with those abilities in mind, they do feel out of place. Like, take the introduction of Mecha in OG Ocean 1. We discovered this new ability in the middle of the third screen, but right before this we are pushed to use Tornado to clear the way. Even the ending part of the screen is perfectly designed for Tornado. So not only is using Mecha not ideal in this scenario, but you also risk hitting the single enemy with the ability, compared to how the original introduced a spear on the very next screen. The first thing you see when entering the screen is an enemy high in the skies with the ability, so not only is your attention focused on the enemy head, but you also need to go slightly out of your way to inhale it. Then the level proceeds to show the strengths of spear, like having to hit this block to open a secret door. All of this is mixed with Mecha and Sand. They appear at random points, and the level design can complement the ability, so it then relies on these abilities to take the focus away from others. Sand now has whip properties, Mecha can burn ice blocks, Mecha's laser goes through walls, and Sand can break metal blocks. While the abilities themselves are so fun to the point that it doesn't really bother me that much, it is a fault that the original didn't have. Oh, and Festival is also here. But if that wasn't enough, there are also some other small improvements, like cool transition between loading screens, making all the instance of motion controls optional, which means that freaks like me can still shake as much as we want without making it necessary, adding more capabilities to screens that needed an ability from the previous room, a more pause execution for every boss, all of them thankfully avoiding the problem of hiding the main story and only giving either fun tidbits on the bosses or by adding some nice mystery. There's a help and murder option that protects you from falling into pits, gives you double health and gives you abilities when you need them, and probably other stuff that I don't know because I'm a gamer that doesn't need any easy modes. Super abilities got a bunch of quality updates, like better and really cute intro animations, you can skip those set animations, attacks are faster, your run speed is also faster, Ultra Sword has both Wall Edge and Morpho Swords as references, Sand and Mecha also have new challenge rooms, some music from the original got swapped around, Extra Mode got a ton of tiny improvements like more enemies and less health items, and most importantly of all changes, they finally display Bandana Waddle Dee as his name instead of simply Waddle Dee. Now that's called justice. There's maybe another small change here and there are some other big stuff that relates to the new content. Speaking of which, welcome everyone to the incredible, delightful park that is Merry Magoland. Here we can enjoy many different features, but it all centers around the main attraction, the 11 sub-games from all around the series. From favorites like Checkerboard Chase from Kirby 64 to more obscure choices like Kirby on the Draft from Kirby Superstar Ultra. Every mainline game including remakes from Adventure to Return to Dreamland is represented here, and it's a great way to re-experience these classic sub-games. But what surprised me the most is how updated they all feel, but still staying true to the original. A great example of this is Bomb Rally from Nightmare in Dreamland. In the original, it wasn't that good. The camera is too close to the characters and it feels like more chance if you're hitting the bombs or not. Well, in Merry Magoland, not only is the camera more far out letting you actually see where the bomb is, the greatest part is how good hitting the bomb feels. The closer the bomb gets to you, the faster you hit it, and you can even press the button before the bomb arrives to switch directions. I think these things were in the original, but that added smoothness and special effects make it more satisfying. Bomb Rally also shows another aspect I really appreciate, the different control options. All the sub-games can be played with a button control, but some can be used with motion controls. This means that you can play minigames like Kirby Dojo like it was meant to be played on the Wii, and for the case of Kirby on the Draw, you can use the stick, gyro controls, or if you are playing on handheld, touch controls. Just like the original. Strangely, Smash Right from Squid Squad does not have touch controls. Not that I wanted them, but the option would have been nice. But it's not just all old stuff. We also have two new sub-games, those being Magolor Stone Truckers and Booming Blasters. These are fun. The first one has you and 3 other people have to find the specific book Magolor is searching for, and only the first one that picks out the correct book gets a point. After a while, Lat Change will activate and there will be multiple correct books to pick up, each one giving you 2 points. It's a simple yet exciting sub-game. My only real problem is how random it can be. Sometimes you are really close to the correct tone, but sometimes it is at the other side of the room and you really can't do anything about it. Booming Blasters on the other hand, peak. This is a very simple but engaging top-down shooter. Your mission is to eliminate your opponents and be the last one remaining. You have a straight normal shot and a charged lob shot that explodes when touching the ground. If you hit enough opponents, your shots will power up and become faster and bigger, incentivizing to go on the offensive instead of hiding in a corner until the last second. Oh, and when some time passes, Kabula shows up with this incredible remix of both Heavy Lobster and Mean Breath, and starts dropping bombs all over the place. Man, with Dream Buffet and now this, I want Mean Breath to become the Time's Up song of the series. And while we're on the topic of music, gotta say, it's great. Redolder has such a unique style that makes it one of the best soundtracks in the entire series, and I'm happy to report that all the new compositions for this remake still keep that iconic style while being bangers on their own. Or at least the new tracks, that is. All the original music has been remastered, which means a different mixing here, another instrument there, some reverb, small stuff like that, and honestly, I couldn't tell the difference for the most part. Are they better than the original? I don't know. I keep seeing people be like, oh, this song is so good now, or why they add so much reverb to this song, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Even though I've been hearing these songs for well over 10 years now. So instead of being a smartass, I'll talk about the songs that I can talk about, like all the great remixes from the different sub-games. Some great examples are Checkerboard Chase, Kirby on the Drag, and the title theme, A Bomb Rat. But if you're a fan of the original tracks, don't worry, because if you beat every vision in that corresponding minigame, you unlock the original music from each game. Such a loving attention to detail. But I did say something about missions, didn't I? To add to the much needed replay value of this mode, there are 120 missions, 100 normal missions and 20 extra missions. These are pretty fun. They range from simple beat every difficulty to ones that switch your playstyle, like Win Bomb Rally with only reverse shots. They give a nice spicy twist on these classic sub-games that personally made me appreciate them more than the original. Not every mission is perfect, of course, especially some of the hard missions can go fuck themselves. Like the Crackety Hack win 3 times in a row, or the Checkerboard Chase win without losing 1 life on high speed mode in the hardest difficulty. That last one took me a while. And yes, you can cheat some with multiplayer and whatnot, but I still think doing them the correct way is part of the experience, and it makes Merry Magoland more than a simple minigame collection. But what do you get for your troubles? Well, 2 things. By just performing well in this outgame, you get stamps for your stamp rally. Get enough stamps and you will unlock special souvenirs like cannons, health items and random ability stars that you can then use in the other modes at any time. But the stamp rally reward that we actually care about is the masks. It's exactly what it sounds like. By doing stuff like getting enough stamps in Stamp Rally, completing mission, or defeating a boss, you can obtain a grand total of 86 masks with tons of references from all the corners of the series. You can then put on these masks and play with them in sub-games or in the main mode. You can also take them off and put them on at any time at the press of a button. I like masks. They serve as a nice bit of fanservice that serves as a great reward. And for the masks themselves, we have some great choices, like the Mage Sisters, the Animal Friends, Zero, Dracia, Nightmare, Dark Meta Knight, and the list goes on and on and on. But every 10 missions completed, you will get an odd for every stylized Dream Friend. This can have fun obscure references like Pick a Mime from Kirby Dreamland 2, or really cool ones like Mark Soul from Superstar Ultra. But then there's stuff like Focus Adeline and Smiling Elfelin? Really? There's absolutely no other characters that they could reference? Nothing at all? Oh well, that's a small problem. But there is one huge fundamental issue with the whole game. You see, there's an extra sub-game called Samurai Kirby 100, where you compete against the previous 100 online ghost times. There's also a manager Magolor who will connect you to the internet to tell you about fan statistics, like how many pop flowers have bloomed or how many waldies have died tragically. See that? Well, those are the only online components. There's no real online play at all. And I'll be real, in 2023? This is so stupid. What's even the point of having such a rich and quality multiplayer focus mode just for it to be restricted to local play? I can maybe understand the main story not being online, but Mary Magoland? This is unacceptable, straight up. I wouldn't care if it ran like ass, just a simple option would have been great to have. More strangely is that the previous Kirby game, Kirby Dream Buffet, had probably one of the best LOA systems in any Nintendo game. It ran like ass, yes, but it was there, and it was fun. With that said, I still don't think Mary Magoland is a waste. With the unique missions, the cool masks, and the incredible attention to detail, this is still, at the end of the day, a fantastic addition to an already great game. So even though I couldn't play with my friends all over the world, I still had a blast going through each and every sub-game, seeing what changed, completing challenges, filling out my stamp rally. It was really fun. But in the case that no online play is still the breaking point, HAL does have one more trick up their sleeve. After defeating the Grand Duman and finally fixing the Lord Star Cutter, Magolor invites Team Kirby to his home planet Halcandra. Once there, they are attacked by the four-headed dragon known as Landia. Magolor warns Team Kirby as Landia has gone mad, possessing the powerful Master Crown. So it's up to Kirby and his friends to defeat the dragon and stop its rampage. After a metal general plot description that might have broken the entire timeline, we arrive at Danger's Dinner, and more specifically, Landia. After a pretty underwhelming fight, not gonna lie, we are presented with the single best twist in the history of this franchise. Magolor was the bad guy all along. Yeah, not that shocking anymore, isn't it? But if you had no prior knowledge of this game like we all did back in 2011, you will develop trust issues after this. As I said a million times before, the game wants you to love Magolor. The game tries its hardest to make these characters as likable as possible. And it does so in such a clever, sneaky way where you don't even notice how much Magolor starts to grow on you. There's no dramatic backstory, there's no thoughtful conversation, and there's nothing really hidden from you. There are spicy conversations about ancients and magical objects, but that doesn't mean anything for this moment. Magolor is simply a good friend, which makes this moment hit that much harder. And the remake elevates that. Not only is the presentation outstanding, with a special shout out to how the font changes once Magolor transforms, but with help of Magolor and Mary Magoland, the connection gets even bigger. And then you go to another dimension with Landia in this space shooter akin to Superstar, and the music is incredible. Then Magolor shows up and he uses the Lord Star Cutter against you. The way it attacks you using the outer shape part that you have collected, turning your hard work into yet another way of mocking Kirby for being so trustworthy. And then the section ends with another great cutscene of Magolor getting rid of everyone, one by one. After that, we enter the final area, made even more stunning by DELUXE's upgrade. And the entire battle that ensues is just wonderful. Nice detail here is that when you get access to the super abilities to break Magolor's magic shield, you use the original animation from the Wii game. What a way to toy with my heart, HAL. Once defeated, Magolor completely falls victim to the Master Crown's power, starting what is still, in my opinion, one of the greatest Kirby final bosses. And so, we defeat Magolor once and for all, and finally, return to Dreamland. A year later, we got the incredible Kirby's Dream Collection. Aside from being a great way to experience some older titles and a celebration of the long history of Kirby, it also had a third mode, new challenge stages. It was a cool addition to the package, but it was also interesting in the way that it served as sort of an epilogue to Return to Dreamland, reintroducing none other than Magolor itself. And this was not a simple non-canon fanservice moment. Magolor was back, and he is a good guy now? Even as someone who didn't even reach the double digits in age, this took away some of the impact from that original game. And that underwhelming redemption was what we got for a long time. Well, here's Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, final big edition. This is Magolor Epilogue, the interdimensional traveler. After the events of the main game, Magolor has been drifting through another dimension, getting rid of his powers in the process, and also he lost all of his trip. Poor guy. After waking up in a strange place and fighting some enemies, Magolor finds a fruit fragment, and seeing how he restores some of his powers and lights up a mysterious torch, Magolor sets out on an adventure to gather all the fruit fragments, recover his abilities, and return to Dreamland. Man, what a setup! We had played as other characters other than Kirby before, but this is not a retelling of the same adventure. Magolor Epilogue is, well, an epilogue to the main story. The explanation of what happened to Magolor is finally here, and my god, do they take advantage of that setup from just a visual level. Yes, we are reusing assets from the main story, but these colors are so good, and yet everything feels sad and dangerous. Don't get it twisted, this is still part of another dimension, and you can tell. All the levels are elemental theme, but with the same type of foreground as we see in the another dimension of the base game and from Stylize, making each area feel distinct yet connected. And speaking of that, another dimension from the main story, look at them! After so many years, we can finally fight these enemies on ground and not on Landia. It's small, but for some reason makes me really happy. What also makes me happy is this banger music. Just like with Mary Magoland, they managed to make every song fitting Return to Dreamland soundtrack while still delivering on its own style. If I had to sum up the entire soundtrack in one word, it would be despair. Just like with the aesthetics, there's a looming sadness surrounding this mode, and yet it's still very energetic, like it's telling both you and Magolor, this is bad, but you're the only one that can change your fate. There's also insane names like Onward to a Pain My Heart Knows Well and Teardrops Falling Down My Face. But enough of that, because the major highlight is the gameplay. Magolor has a very similar moveset to his Stylize version, with a couple of new moves while getting rid of others for reasons. You only start with the most basic attacks, but you get more as you defeat the bosses. But the really interesting twist is that just like action games like Devil May Cry, Magolor Epilogue centers around a combo system. By hitting enemies, blocks, and others in quick succession, you build a combo. The bigger the combo, the bigger the reward. And let me tell you, this might be one of the single best gameplay additions in the whole series. Kirby always had a very interesting and fun combo system. Despite most enemies having like 2 HP, it's fun attacking them over and over with a huge moveset of every ability. And with the improvements in Deluxe, this system is at its peak. But it was always there for no reason. It's fun, but who cares? Well, by just adding some simple numbers, Magolor Epilogue turns this concept into its whole identity. It's no longer about how to get to the end, but how can I extend my combo the furthest. Juggling enemies with up attack, shooting random blocks from a distance, or waiting for enemies to line up for a powerful super attack. This also reflects on the levels, and as it has way more enemies than your normal level, and on multiple occasions it traps you in an area with enemies constantly spawning. Inside I just meant down, up, B, and there it is, but here it's exciting. But what do you get for racking up big combos? Well, introducing the magic points. You can find them all throughout the levels, and you get some free ones after finishing a stage for the first time, but the main way to get them is the previously mentioned combo system. These magic points can then be spent to power Magolor up. Some are simple like more health or more floating time, but some are more interesting like increasing the length of time before a combo ends, doubling your moves, adding powerful charge attacks, or creating a magic shield to protect yourself. Magolor also has some great dialogue here that progressively shows him becoming both nicer, imagining using his powers to have fun with his friends, and an asshole, creating moves to make his enemies suffer and thinking of conquering other places other than Dreamland. It's all incredible. But going back to the gameplay side, this creates a nice cycle where you want to do well in the stages to upgrade your moveset, which then leads you to having more options to rack up bigger combos, which then gives you bigger magic point rewards that you can then use for more upgrades. But in the case that this cycle fails, which it doesn't, there are two more worms in the apple. The first is medals, that rank you depending on the amount of magic points you gather on said stage. You need at least a gold medal if you want the super secret bonus level, but there's also some platinum medals, and after the Blood Blast action from last year, I'm here to say they are fun. Some might say it's disappointing how easy they are to get, and I kinda agree, but with all the merry Magoland missions and the challenge stages from normal and EX modes, I think I'm good. They serve their purpose in incentivizing going back to stages with your upgraded moveset, and I personally had tons of fun getting them all. The other addition are extra stages that only unlock when you upgrade specific moves, incentivizing you to spend those magic points. Thankfully these are not ranked by medals. That way they can focus more on certain moves which serve both as a tutorial and a test of your abilities. But what's a new post-game mode without some upgraded bosses? And boy are these bosses upgraded! One of the problems for Etunia is that it doesn't have the most complex bosses. Magolor Epilogue fixed that by making all the base game bosses way more interesting and deadly. Electricity Duder uses more moves that play on the trickery aspect. Fiery Puffer leaves fire on the ground after rolling, keeping you in the air, which makes it more interesting since your levitation might not be the highest at that point. Hydra launches giant water orbs that linger on screen and mixes his already established attack with instant transmission. Love to see the Dragon Ball reference going strong yet again. And the Rampaging Doomers being a stronger mix between the Sphere Doomers and Landia, going from left to right, dropping gas bombs that explode after some while, always keeping you on the move. But when it comes to Magolor Epilogue bosses, there's one that completely overshadows the rest. But for that, we need to get back to the story. After getting all of moves back and collecting out the fruit fragments, the red fruit is finally completed. Where have we seen that before? There's no time for questioning, as the big boss behind all the other bosses is here, Crown Doomer. Powered by the shards of the Master Crown, this boss serves as a power-up version of Crown Doomer, which already was a power-up version of the Sphere Doomers, which are already expanded on with the Ranging Doomers. And it's like this boss does much to stand out, having a ton of the same tricks as the previous bosses. Not to say it's easy, far from it, especially when he pulls out the lasers in phase 2. You better upgrade as much as possible because it gets tough. But overall, what a letdown for a final boss. Then we just grab the red fruit and return to... Thanks to the red fruit, the remains of the item that started all managed to be reborn in a new form. This is the tree crown with no ruler, the Master Crown itself. And what proceeds is one of, if not the best boss in the entire franchise. Can't believe Whispy is the final boss. The gimmick of this fight is that the Master Crown will stay in the background, constantly bombarding you with different attacks like gem apples that work the same way as Magolor's moving satellites, leaves that will home on you, the roots attack from marks, giant lasers, summoning power-up enemies, and even slamming on the ground just to fuck with you. But your only way of hitting back is by attacking its giant spiky roots that will teleport in and out of different places at different angles, all around the area. This makes it so you can't just A-frame your way and completely demolish the boss in seconds. You actually have to interact with the boss's attack and choose the opportune moments to fight back. Sometimes you can only launch a couple of energy shots, but you can also plan ahead and set bigger traps like bombs or spikes. Sometimes you need to attack the gem apple to stop them from exploding. Sometimes you need to focus on the enemy which will distract you from breaking said gem apples. And as the fight progresses, the Master Crown becomes more and more sneaky, making attacks stronger and combining moves together. And the music? Oh my god! Using the multiple leitmotif of Magolor with songs from Kirby Collage, for some reason, I don't know what's that about, it comes together in such a majestic and imposing way. A perfect finale for this incredible mode. And so, clever use of your attacks, predicting the movements of the boss, deciding what to prioritize, smartly using defensive techniques, and using your super attacks at the opportune moments. The Master Crown is defeated. But it's still not enough. So using quick thinking, Magolor picks up a random sword on the ground that might or might not be important, I don't know. And with his restored power, he summons the Ultra Sword to free the tree and bring an end to the destruction, to take responsibilities for his wicked ways. With all the magic infused into the sword, he must strike. Magolor must atone for his misdeeds. Would you believe me if I said I saw that from the game itself? And so, for real this time, Magolor manages to put an end to both the Master Crown and his evil ways. After the sky clears, he enters a portal and escapes from another dimension, finally returning to Dream Kingdom. Most of you already noticed long ago, but yes, this story is not only here to explain what happened to Magolor, but it's also here to connect the Kirby Clash universe with the main universe, having the remains of the Master Crown turned into a gem apple tree, with Magolor becoming the future shopkeeper who will also supply a junk set of heroes with different types of gears and potions in the near future, for a price of course. They really did make a whole mode just to explain the microtransaction in this little alternate universe from this little download only free to play spin-off. Wow, this right here, it's good storytelling. We already knew that shopkeeper Magolor and Orb Magolor were the same thanks to an old, but those days are over. With heroes in another dimension, Forgo Dreams, and now Magolor Epilogue, Hal has finally stopped hiding crucial information behind that website or obscure post description. Those are still here and they are just as juicy as ever, but the main story is perfectly told. We see the journey of redemption Magolor had to undergo, we see how he got to the Kirby Clash universe, and we see what happened to the Master Crown. All this can be understood and appreciated without any words, just like a Kirby story should be. Again, if you are fond of the insane lore, there's a ton of that to enjoy. I mean, did you hear the words that came out of my mouth a minute ago? So, do I think Magolor Epilogue is a worthy addition? Yes. If the game was just a remake with Mary Magoland, I don't think it would have been worth the full price. But with this, absolutely. This game is filled with content, all of which is a fun ride from start to finish. It doesn't fundamentally do anything different to Return to Dreamland, but instead it builds around that original game with tiny and big additions on every corner. Is that a good or bad thing? Depends on how you see Return to Dreamland. So to someone as me that loves this game, it sounds like we ever asked for. And we are still not done yet. Just like in the original, once you beat the main story, you unlock the arena, a mode where you fight every boss one after another, with small rest areas in between battles for you to heal from a limited amount of health items or to switch abilities. The Deluxe doesn't add much, it lets you use the new abilities and it lets you take advantage of different souvenir items. This makes the arena much easier, but it's completely optional, so for the people that struggle with the difficulty, they can have an easier time, while for people that want the original experience, they can do just that. And then there's the true arena. In the original, this was unlocked after beating the extra mode and had all the harder version of the bosses, with a neat additional fight with Galactonite, a pretty fun challenge. But compared to newer games, it's a bit lackluster in hindsight. What the f do you mean there's 21 bosses now? So, now you need to beat extra mode and Magolor's Epilogue, which means every new boss from that post game is here, and it still includes every boss from the original True Arena, and no more cheating with Magolor Surge and Magic Bombs. Did I mention that it still keeps the 3 maximum tomato from the original? You can still use the souvenir items if the challenge is too much for you, but if you want to do this respecting the rules of the True Arena, then good luck, my friend. But who will be the final boss? The Master Crown or Magolor Soul? Well, the answer is Magolor Soul, which sounds disappointing at first, but right before the fight you hear a song named Internal Struggle. Whoa, you know this is not going to be just Magolor Soul. with a stylized remix of Crown playing and with a beautiful dark and red background. HAL immediately lets you know, no, this is not Magolor Soul. This fight is crazy good. I already said how much I love Magolor Soul's original fight, but this version grabs the already enhanced form of the extra mode and changes things in the smartest of ways that completely changes the fight. Not only are he attacks much faster and deadlier, but he specifically uses his moves to avoid cheese from the original. You can't stay in the corner for long now. Mago will put spiky needles on that corner, then throw magic spheres at you. Before you would just stay in the corner and super heal. Now, you simply can't. Same with the teleport lasers, they get a much trickier pattern. The magic spheres are even bigger than normal, the spike patterns are more complex, he teleports much more often. Despite this already being a hard arena, that doesn't mean HAL won't pull all the tricks they have. But there is some mercy, as when we defeat the first health bar, Magolor drops a small apple to replenish some health, and boy will you need it. Magolor's eyes are gone as the one from his mouth takes over, starting phase 2 right away with the new super ability attacks for both Sand and Mecha, a neat callback to those abilities being added in this remake. But if you think it would come down after that, wrong! This phase takes moves from the original second phase, namely the super attacks, and twists on them. Flare B now has 3 magic orbs following you, both Grand Snow Hammer and Ultra Sword are upside down, the Juggle move and the teleport ones are also upside down. More tricky spike patterns, more magic spheres, all combinations to create an incredible fight, and with the rest of the true arena having so many bosses, many of which rival some of the hardest fights in the series, this might just be the single hardest boss rush in the entire series. I beat it with Hammer first try. What can I say? Good hammer flip or not, it's broken. After beating everything this game has to offer, we get a delightful remake cutscene of Kirby Master, and it's still a pleasure to see. For beating each of the arenas, you get to play as one of the 3 playable characters for that respective arena, those being Bandana Wild D, Meta Knight, and King D. I tried to hold it for long to not derail the video, but I have to end this once and for all. Let's talk about the Dedede design. All of the cars have been updated to the new one design. For these 3 it's not a problem. Personally speaking, they look much better than the original. But for Dedede, instead of updating the original model, they decided to create a brand new one based on the Forgotten Land. And I'll be the first to admit that this design is not bad. Personally, I prefer the body and head to be more separate, but for Forgotten Land, it's a big and intimidating design perfect for that game. In Forgotten Land, Dreamland takes a much more goofy atmosphere, with most of the comedy being from Dedede's expression and actions. Laughing at Kirby in the title screen, being shocked that Magolor was a sussy bag all along, sneezing as his idol animation, being all smug and shit after beating the arena, or doing this face. I don't know what that means, but I love it. But in my personal opinion, this new design just isn't as expressive. Aside from having to be downscaled to actually fit in with the rest of the cast, his smaller eyes and beak completely ruin all the goofy moments he had in the original. This is not a jab at the animators, as we can see in the many Merry Magoland animation, aspects in which this new Dedede design does shine. Whether he's trying to be angry, intimidated or happy, he looks good. Dare I say, great. But every time I see the let me explain everything face or mocking Kirby on the title screen, I can't help but just say, man, I like the older design better. I do think HAL is on a great path in terms of animation and design, but maybe next time they should realize the strengths and weaknesses of their designs and not try to force something it doesn't belong to. And those are my final opinions on this topic. Actually a few more words. This f***ing sucks! Okay, got that out of my system. So how do I feel about Dreamland Deluxe? Well, there's not much to say that I haven't said before. Kirby's Return to Dreamland is still an excellent game, and Deluxe is simply better. Not everything is perfect, some things aren't as tight as before, some parts look worse than the original, and the lack of online is a massive blow to the game. But, with its gorgeous visuals, tons of added tiny improvements to the base game, Merry Magoland being a super fun celebration of the sub-games, Magolor Epilogue being a fantastic mode with really good gameplay and story, and the True Arena being one of the hardest Kirby challenges yet. I think Deluxe goes way further than any other Kirby remake has in the past. Superstar Ultra might still be considered as the gold standard for fantastic remakes to still keep the integrity of the original while adding a ton of stuff. But I think Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe manages to do everything that game has and more. Don't let that full $60 price tag scare you. Be it is your first Kirby adventure or you're a massive fan of the series, this game is completely worth it. The memories and nostalgia I have for the original game will never go away, and I might still replay that version from time to time. But it's crazy to say that Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is my new favorite Kirby game. That's all from me, and I'll see you on the next drive. Wait, this game doesn't have sculpture. Never mind, this game is ass.